The distant clang of metal on stone echoed through the narrow canyon as Thomas Everett clutched his worn leather satchel to his chest. His once fine boots, now cracked and dusty, stumbled over the rocky path leading to Silver Peak mining camp. 6 months ago, he'd been celebrating his first book in a Boston publisher's office. Now, with rejection letters stuffed in his bag and his last dollar spent on stale bread 3 days ago, he faced the grim reality of what it meant to be truly desperate. The camp appeared ahead, a collection of rough-hewn buildings clinging to the mountainside like stubborn growths, smoke rising from the massive smelter that seemed to devour the landscape around it. Thomas swallowed hard. He was a man of words, not pickaxes, but words wouldn't feed him anymore. The mine was his last hope. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Your comment helps our community grow stronger. Thanks, and let's get back to the story. The foreman's laughter cracked through the air like a whip when Thomas inquired about work as the camp writer. Writer! Morton Jenkins spat a stream of tobacco juice that barely missed Thomas's boot. What in tarnation would we need a writer for? This ain't no newspaper office. Thomas stood his ground despite the flush creeping up his neck. The journey had taken his last strength, and the thought of traveling farther into the mountains with empty pockets was unimaginable. Every operation needs record-keeping, Thomas said firmly, despite his growling stomach. Inventory, correspondence with suppliers, reports to investors. I'm educated, sir. I can manage accounts, draft contracts. You ever handled dynamite, city boy? Jenkins interrupted, eyeing Thomas's ink-stained fingers. No, but Then you're about as useful here as a silk parasol in a blizzard. The gathered miners chuckled, returning to their card game in the corner of the camp's makeshift office. Thomas felt his last hope slipping away when a voice spoke from the doorway. I could use someone with a steady hand and a good vocabulary. The room fell silent as everyone turned toward the tall figure silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. Even in the shadow, there was no mistaking the commanding presence of Silas Blackwood, owner of the Silver Peak mine. Thomas had heard stories on his journey. Blackwood had struck one of the richest silver veins in Colorado Territory 5 years ago and built an empire from dust and determination. The miners straightened immediately, their mocking smiles evaporating. Mr. Blackwood, this fella's looking to push papers, not move rock, Jenkins explained. Blackwood stepped into the room, his calculating eyes measuring Thomas from head to toe. I've got correspondence piling up and contracts to review. My investors in Denver are demanding more detailed reports. He rubbed his bearded jaw. You say you're educated. Where? Harvard, sir, Thomas answered, standing taller despite his exhaustion. Something shifted in Blackwood's expression. Surprise, perhaps even approval. Follow me, he ordered, turning without waiting for a response. Thomas grabbed his satchel, ignoring the miner's curious stares as he hurried after his potential salvation. Blackwood's office occupied the entire second floor of the largest building in camp. Unlike the rough accommodations below, this space spoke of wealth and refinement. Polished wooden floors, a massive desk crafted from rich mahogany, and bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes that made Thomas's heart ache with familiarity. Large windows overlooked the entire operation, a constant reminder of who watched over everything. My daughter selected most of the books, Blackwood remarked, noting Thomas's attention to the library. She has quite the appetite for literature. Your daughter lives here? Thomas couldn't mask his surprise. The mining camp was no place for a family, let alone a young woman. Blackwood's expression hardened. Eleanor stays in the residence beyond those trees. He pointed through the window to a path winding toward a smaller structure set apart from the camp. She's delicate. The mountain air is good for her condition. Before Thomas could inquire further, Blackwood outlined the position: managing correspondence, keeping precise records of or yields and supplies, drafting reports to investors. The pay was more generous than Thomas had dared hope, with a small cabin to himself and meals provided. One condition, Blackwood added, his voice dropping to a warning tone. The north side of the property, beyond the residence, is strictly forbidden. My daughter's privacy is paramount to her health. Any man caught trespassing there will be removed from this mountain permanently. Are we clear, Mr. Everett? Thomas nodded quickly. Perfectly clear, sir. That night in his new cabin, Thomas wrote by lantern light for the first time in weeks. Not fiction, those dreams seemed childish now, but a letter to his sister in Chicago. The words flowed easily. I found employment at a mining operation in Colorado. The work is not what I imagined for myself, but the compensation is fair, and I've a roof over my head once more. Please don't worry. I'll send money when I can. He didn't mention his failed novel or the growing stack of rejection letters. Some truths were better left on the page, never to be read. Days passed in a blur of ink and paper. Thomas quickly proved his worth, organizing Blackwood's chaotic records into orderly ledgers and crafting eloquent letters that brought faster responses from suppliers and additional investments from Denver businessmen. The miners still viewed him with mild contempt, the scribbler they called him. But as Blackwood's approval became apparent, they kept their distance. Thomas found unexpected peace in his routine. Each morning he walked the perimeter of the camp, watching the sun illuminate the jagged mountain peaks, before settling at his desk by the window in Blackwood's office. The owner himself was often absent, traveling to Denver or inspecting new claims, leaving Thomas to work in solitude. It was during one such absence, nearly 3 weeks after his arrival, that Thomas first saw her. He'd stepped outside during a break, stretching his cramped fingers, when movement along the forbidden path caught his eye. A slender figure in a pale blue dress moved between the trees, her face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. Without thinking, Thomas followed, maintaining a respectful distance. The woman paused at a small clearing overlooking the valley below. She removed her hat, releasing a cascade of copper hair that caught the sunlight like flame. Even from a distance, Thomas could see she was beautiful, not in the painted, practiced way of Boston socialites, but with a natural grace that seemed almost otherworldly against the rugged landscape. She opened a book, settling against a boulder to read. The simple act, so out of place in this harsh environment, transfixed him. He must have made some sound. A twig snapping underfoot, perhaps, because she suddenly looked up, her eyes finding him immediately. Thomas expected fear or outrage at his intrusion. Instead, curiosity brightened her expression as she studied him. "You're the new writer," she called, her voice carrying clearly across the distance between them. He stepped forward, conscious of Blackwood's warning but unable to retreat. "Thomas Everett, ma'am. I apologize for disturbing you." "Eleanor Blackwood," she replied, closing her book. "And you're not disturbing me. Quite the opposite. You've saved me from the tedium of this particular author's overwrought descriptions. Have you read Thackeray, Mr. Everett?" The conversation that followed was like finding water after a long drought. Eleanor was not only well-read but insightful, challenging his opinions on literature with arguments so compelling he found himself reconsidering long-held beliefs. As the sun began its descent, she suddenly glanced toward the path, her expression clouding. "You should go," she said, gathering her things. "My father doesn't approve of company." "He mentioned your health," Thomas ventured, reluctant to end their discussion. "I hope you're well?" A shadow passed over her face. "My father sees frailty where none exists," she replied, a hint of bitterness edging her words. "But his concern comes from love, so I endure the solitude." She hesitated, then added, "I walk here every afternoon while he's occupied with the mine operations. Perhaps we'll encounter each other again." Accidentally. Thomas understood her meaning immediately. "I find the mountain air quite beneficial myself. Daily walks are essential for maintaining a clear mind." Her smile was worth any risk Blackwood's warning presented. Their accidental meetings continued through the following weeks. Thomas learned that Eleanor had been raised in the East until her mother's death 10 years ago. After that, Blackwood had brought his 12-year-old daughter west, keeping her increasingly isolated as she grew into womanhood. She'd had tutors but no friends, books but no companions to discuss them with. "Father believes the world would be too harsh for me," she explained one afternoon as they sat beneath the sheltering branches of a pine tree. "After Mother died of pneumonia, he became convinced I'd inherited her weak constitution." "And did you?" Thomas asked gently. Eleanor laughed, the sound bright against the constant background rumble of the mine. "I haven't been ill a day in my life, but fear is a powerful force, Mr. Everett." "Thomas," he corrected, not for the first time. "Thomas," she conceded with a soft smile. "Fear shapes everything for my father. He built walls around me out of love, but they're walls nonetheless." With each meeting, Thomas found himself more drawn to Eleanor's quick mind and quiet strength. She devoured the books her father brought from Denver but yearned for more. Experiences, conversations, a life beyond the boundaries of Silver Peak. In turn, he shared stories of his travels, his failed literary ambitions, and his hope to someday write something worthy of publication. "Read to me," she requested one day, settling beside him closer than propriety would allow. Something of your own. Thomas hesitated. My writing is why I ended up here, desperate for any work. It can't be very good. Let me decide, Eleanor insisted, her green eyes challenging him. From his pocket, he withdrew a folded page. The beginning of a new story, started during lonely evenings in his cabin. As he read, Eleanor's expression softened, her attention absolute. When he finished, silence stretched between them. You've been listening to the mountain, she finally said. I don't understand. She gestured to the valley below them. This place has stories buried deeper than any silver vein. You've somehow heard them. She took his hand, her fingers warm against his. Don't stop writing, Thomas. Promise me. The touch of her hand ignited something dangerous in his chest. Eleanor. A shout from the direction of the camp shattered the moment. Thomas recognized Jenkins's voice calling his name. He's returned early, Eleanor whispered, fear flashing across her face. They both knew she meant her father. Thomas helped her to her feet, reluctantly releasing her hand. Go quickly. I'll make sure no one sees you. For a breathless moment, she stood close enough that he could see gold flecks in her green eyes. Then she was gone, disappearing down a hidden path through the trees. Thomas returned to find the camp in unusual commotion. Blackwood had indeed returned early, bringing news that changed everything. An Eastern investor was arriving within the week, considering a major partnership that would expand Silver Peak tenfold. Everything must be perfect, Blackwood instructed, pacing his office while Thomas took hurried notes. The ledgers, production reports, the geological surveys, prepare it all for presentation. The days that followed left no time for afternoon walks. Thomas worked from dawn until well past midnight, organizing years of documentation into compelling evidence of Silver Peak's profitability. The absence of Eleanor was a constant ache, but he consoled himself that soon the investor meetings would end. The evening before the investor's arrival, Blackwood summoned Thomas to his quarters, a rare invitation that signaled the importance of the coming day. You've exceeded my expectations, Everett, Blackwood said, pouring 2 glasses of expensive whiskey. If this partnership succeeds, your position here will become permanent, with a considerable increase in compensation. Thomas accepted the offered drink. Thank you, sir. I've come to appreciate Silver Peak. Blackwood studied him over the rim of his glass. Have you now? And what exactly do you appreciate most about my mountain, Mr. Everett? Something in his tone raised Thomas's guard. The opportunity you've provided, sir, and the beauty of the landscape. Indeed, Blackwood set down his glass with careful precision. Beauty can be quite distracting, can't it? Particularly when it's forbidden. Thomas's heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his expression neutral. I'm not sure I understand your meaning, sir. No. Blackwood moved to his desk, retrieving a folded paper. Perhaps this will clarify things. He handed Thomas a page torn from a small book. On it, written in a delicate hand, were the words, "Same time tomorrow. I've missed our conversations." Cold dread settled in Thomas's stomach. A man who would clearly benefit from an attachment to the Blackwood name and fortune. Blackwood's expression hardened. I won't bury my child, Mr. Everett. Not for your romantic notions or her temporary infatuation.